Okay, Dave, I have another question for you, and this one comes from Tom Hewlett, and it's about omnipotency and attributes of God. Does the problem of God creating a weight he can't lift show the incoherence of omnipotency?
Yes. Quick answer. It seems like a trivial question. It seems like a silly mind game, or something philosophers do, i.e. waste time, pointless, futile. But actually it's not at all trivial. The idea that God could create a weight he can't lift seems trivial, but comes to the heart of what omnipotency means, because we tend to trot out the attributes of God when we're discussing these things. Omnipotence, omniscience, omnibenevolence, and all these other grand-sounding things, without any thought really to what they mean. And the more we pay attention to omnipotence, and the more, as the questioner puts, the more we pay attention to omnipotence, the less coherent it seems, the more troubling it seems. Because could God create something that he can't live? Well, it is paradoxical just to have a being that can do that. Because if he can, then he's all powerful, but then he can't do something, so he's not all powerful. If he can't, there's something he can't do, and therefore he's not omnipotent. So it's paradoxical, and should lead us to think omnipotence is a bit of a difficult one. We don't even necessarily know whether omnipotence sits within space and time or outside of it. Does God see all of time at once? Or is God within time? Because we don't even know what it would mean to sit outside. It's really quite problematic. And the reason, not the reason, one of the reasons why this question doesn't just entertain philosophers and people with too much time on their hands, is because there are other paradoxes of omnipotence that come to the heart of problems around what God means. So if we take, for example, the problem of evil, we can look at the problem of evil and say, well, couldn't God create a being who is completely free to choose between good and evil, but always chooses good? And you say, no, God couldn't create that, it won't make sense. Well, is that a limit on God's potence? Omnipotence? Is that because surely God can do whatever he or she wants. Surely that's what omnipotence means. Or does it not? So a lot of theologians, or a lot of philosophers of religion, sorry, not the same species at all, a lot of philosophers of religion actually end up with a version of omnipotence that is scaled down. So although omnipotence sounds very big and grand and powerful, you often end up with a version of God can do that which is logically possible. So you end up with a version of omnipotence which isn't what people think it is when they first come across it in a textbook. So you often end up with a version of omnipotence which is still pretty powerful. It's a lot more powerful than you or I or humans or any other being in the universe. But it's a version of omnipotence which has got logical impossibility already prescribed out. So in order for it to work, for the definition to work and philosophy of religion in the Christian tradition to work, you need to say God is omnipotent in that means God can do anything which is logically possible. Creating a rock that he can't then lift is logically impossible, makes no sense, so rule it out. So they tend to define omnipotence in such a way as to write those questions out, which I think is a shame, because they're good questions. And actually they don't just serve to annoy people, but they actually serve to bring into the light real problems about what omnipotence means. It's a really difficult issue.
Indeed. Well, thanks, Dave. And I think I will, as you know, I'm a biblical scholar, and I'll probably come back to this question from my own area of expertise at another time.
Well, I'd be interested in hearing that, and I presume you'll take the view that what we find in the Bible and what we find in philosophy of religion don't always align that closely.
But we'll look at that later. Thanks, Dave.
Okay.